The hardest part about becoming a manager is that first interview. Getting somebody to trust you to become a people manager with no experience having done it in the past. I did this myself about 9 years ago. In today's video, I'm going to give you some of the questions that they're going to ask you in an interview when you're going to become a first-time people manager. Also, I've been in recruitment for 15 years, so I've asked these questions many times. I'm going to teach you exactly what to say to answer them. Let's go. Now, the first one they're going to ask you is tell me about yourself. This is something they're always going to ask most people at the beginning of an interview. It's a great icebreaker question and gets everybody into the spirit of interviewing. Now, when you want to answer this question, what you don't want to do is give them your full biography, right? Like your full life journey. They're not looking for that. What you should view this as is a commercial. It should be about 60 to 90 seconds where you're talking about your experience from the earliest to the most recent, but what you want to do at the very end of it is end by talking about how everything you have done makes you a great fit for this position right now, right? So you want to say, I got my education doing this, my first couple of jobs I was doing this, after that I was at this, blah, 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 right? Giving a little bit of detail about responsibilities, your jobs, and then you want to use that very end of the interview question, maybe the last third of the time you're answering it, so if it's taking you 90 seconds to answer it, the last 30 seconds, to package all that up and to talk about why you're a good fit for the job. So the end of the question might sound something like this. So my experience has positioned me really well to be a good fit for this. I've spent the last 5 years of my career basically climbing the ladder, doing A, B, and C, which I see as a big part of this role, and it's why I feel like I would be a really good fit for this role. And that's basically it. You want to walk them through conversationally, confidently, with a little bit of enthusiasm, the things you've done from earlier in your career to right now. You don't need to include everything, but include the things that are relevant to the current job you're interviewing for and end with why you'd be a good fit for this job. The next question is, tell me why you want to be a manager. This is a really interesting question because what they're looking for here is, do you want to lead people? Or do you want this job because it's the next thing that you feel you need to do in order to continue climbing the ladder in your career? Now, a lot of people don't want to be a people manager, but to answer this question correctly, you need to have enthusiasm about how you enjoy leading others. Now, if you've never led people in the corporate environment, you can talk about a variety of things. You can talk about leading projects in other teams. You can talk about growing up, how you were a captain of sports teams, if that's applicable, right? But what you really want to do here is just talk about how you love leading others and you feel like it is a good fit for your skills, your personality, and your behaviors. For me, I might answer the question like this. That's a really good question. And I would say growing up, I've always been someone who stepped into leadership roles, whether that was on sports or in different academic projects, or even in my career so far, leading projects within my team, not as a people manager, but just as someone stepping up into a lead role. It's always been something that has motivated me. I find enjoyment of it. And as I look to what's next in my career, I'm really passionate about stepping into that role and using my gifts to lead others. That's a great way to answer why you would want to be a people leader. The next question is, what's your management style? This is a very common question. This is asked in just about every leadership interview you're going to do. What I would say is do a little bit of research on the company. Sometimes on the company website, they say things like servant leadership, or they'll have different core values around leadership, and that could help inform your answer. And they could be part of what you mentioned in the interview process. But if they don't have that, and this is just you specifically talking about why, what your management style is like, I would say find something that's authentic to you, but it needs to be something that is passionate and said with conviction, right? Your management style is an important part of who you would be if they hired you into this role and into their organization. So you might want to say things like, I'm the type of leader where I want open and honest communication, and I lead in a servant leadership style. So what I do is I view my job as, okay, what do I do to make sure that I'm putting my people in position to succeed? So I want to make sure that I'm hiring great people, I'm training them, and I'm positioning them for success. And I would say that's the type of person I am. I'm highly relational, servant leadership, and I'm all about setting my people up for the win. Something like that. That's a great way to answer this question, but find something that feels authentic to you, and ideally one that coincides with their organizational values. This next question is direct, and you might get it, and it's why should we hire you as a manager with no experience? And if someone asks you this question, one, don't be offended, right? This is just an opportunity for you to sell yourself. So don't look at it as them second guessing you. Look at it as you have an opportunity to overcome what is the biggest potential objection here. You don't have experience on something that is highly specific. Why is that not a concern? And the things you might want to say here is you might want to reference some of the things we talked about earlier, that you've led projects, you've supervised other people, you've been the lead on different initiatives, and you've been successful doing that, and you enjoyed it. So you might say something along the lines of, that's a fair question. And I would say that while I haven't led people in the past yet, I have a lot of the skills and abilities and behaviors that I think would make me a highly effective leader. In a lot of my career up to this point, I have led a variety of different projects. I have supervised other people's work while leading projects, and I feel like I really enjoyed that, and I was able to get the best out of people, and it was really motivating. And in those experiences that I've had, we had a lot of success. So for me, while I haven't directly managed people in the past, I do believe I have the skills and abilities to succeed in that role, and the stuff I've done up to this point in my career that is leadership adjacent has gone incredibly well, and I really enjoyed it. That's a great way to answer this question. It's not someone who's offended, you're not taken back, you acknowledge what they're saying is a fair thing to ask, and then you counter it with reasonable objections to their concern. This next question is, how would you handle a low performer on your team? Now, this is something that is bound to happen. If you're going to manage people, eventually you're going to have someone who doesn't perform. And I think it's really important to walk them through a cohesive plan on how you would deal with someone. Now, as someone who is a people leader, I can tell you first and foremost, you need to find out what is happening and make sure that you understand their situation. Secondarily, you need to make sure they understand the objectives that they are being tasked with meeting. So if they're falling below those objectives, they need clarity. What are they tasked with doing on a day-to-day basis, and where are they falling short, so that you give them time to improve? And then you want to help them to hopefully turn it around and achieve those objectives. But ultimately, if they can't do that, then you need to move on, because that's what's best for the organization and ultimately what's best for the team you're tasked with leading. So I would just find a way to say that, articulate that in a way that sounds authentic to you, but that is what you need to say. The next question is, how would you handle a conflict between two members of your team? This is the type of thing that might happen quite a bit. As a people manager, some of it is handling projects, but a lot of it is just understanding people dynamics and leading through difficult moments. So having two people on your team who are in conflict is something that could happen. So in answering this question, you want to make sure that you convey to them that it wouldn't be something that would be overly threatening to you, right? Like that's something you'd be comfortable dealing with. And you want to talk about past experience you have mediating things if you've done that. But for me, if I'm answering this question, it would probably sound a little bit like this. That's a great question. And I think the key to any sort of conflict in the workplace, if you're trying to resolve it, is trying to understand the points of views of the two people. So as a manager, what I would do is I would take the people aside one by one and I would talk to them. And I would try to understand their version of the story, exactly what happened. Now, through getting their perspectives, assuming they'd be a little bit different, I try to figure out where the middle ground is, understand the situation, and see if I could help them work through it and serve as a mediator through whatever it is. Now, if in that discovery I found out that one person is clearly in the wrong and they've done something that is an issue and requires disciplinary action, I would then do that. But most of the time, I think the conflicts can be handled just by taking the time to listen to everybody and helping them work through an issue. A lot of people lack conflict resolution skills, and just by having someone in there with a cool head who can listen to both people and help them work towards common ground, that can often solve it. And there you go. Saying something like that is a good way to answer this interview question. If you can do that, the recruiter will assume that you have done a really good job and that you'd be someone who is well positioned to be a leader for their organization. Now, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to understand that a final interview is different than a beginning interview, even for a people manager role. And it's why I made this video here. This video here talks about the final interview and what is different about that interview than the others. That way you can be prepared for it. So I'm done here. I'll see you over there.